Hello, my name is Priscilla Sano and I am with Grand Canyon University, and today I will be presenting my topic on erythrocytes, blood types, and transfusion reactions. An erythrocyte is a medical term for a red blood cell, and there are about 5 million cells per cubic millimeter. Their main function is to carry oxygen throughout the body, although they can carry other items as well. They are flat and biconcave discs, and that shape assists them with greater surface area so that oxygen may diffuse readily into their cell membranes. Red blood cells are also malleable, and they may travel through tiny capillaries without lysing. Red blood cells do not have organelles, they do not have a nucleus by the time they are completely mature. And the reason behind that is so that they may have enough space so they can house millions of hemoglobin molecules that are capable of carrying a billion oxygen molecules. They do contain two enzymes. The first one is called glycolytic enzyme, and the red blood cell has to go through a process called glycolysis in order to generate energy in the form of ATP. And they need this energy in order to transport oxygen and keep ion concentration steady inside of themselves. They also have what's called carbonic anhydrase, and they convert carbon dioxide into bicarbonate so that it can be transported more readily in the blood to the lungs. Hemoglobin structure. Hemoglobin is very unique in that it can only be found in red blood cells, and it is made of a globin and a heme group. So globin has two of each alpha and beta subunits, and we can see the two alpha subunits or chains, and then we have the two beta groups right here. They are considered to be polypeptides, and then you do have the heme group. This is a heme group, and each heme group does have an iron embedded within it. These heme groups are not considered to be proteins. Now, one heme group will be bound to each of the globin polypeptides. So we see the polypeptide and a heme group, polypeptide and a heme group, and so forth. Each heme group may pick up an oxygen molecule in the lungs, so therefore each hemoglobin molecule may pick up a total of 4 oxygen that will be bound to each of the heme groups. Approximately about 98% of oxygen is carried by hemoglobin because oxygen isn't soluble in the plasma portion of the blood. Hemoglobin is a pigment and it does contain iron as previously stated, and it looks red when attached to oxygen and blue when not attached to the molecule. And that directly correlates to either arterial or venous blood. Therefore, arterial blood somewhat looks reddish and venous blood looks somewhat bluish. As stated before, hemoglobin may bind with other molecules, and they do include carbon dioxide, so it does help to transport it back to the lungs. It can bind to another substance that's called the acidic hydrogen ion portion of ionized carbonic acid. It helps to buffer it so that it does not affect our pH levels. And it can bind to carbon monoxide if it is present. It will end up binding to the oxygen binding sites on the heme group, and it can lead to poisoning and even death. Another thing it can bind to is nitric oxide. It picks it up in the lungs and takes it to tissues to assist with vasodilation so that blood can travel freely and stabilize blood pressure. Because red blood cells do lack organelles and a nucleus, they cannot replicate themselves through DNA replication and through the process of mitosis. So they cannot live past about 120 days. Eventually, the cell membrane starts to break down and it can no longer stay intact. It will end up in the spleen to be removed from the circulation. The bone marrow produces more red blood cells in a process that's called erythropoiesis. So when there is a decrease in red blood cells, there is also a direct effect in oxygen. So when this occurs, the kidneys detect this and they release what's called erythropoietin into the blood. This will then influence the bone marrow to produce more erythrocytes, and it does go through a process. Very first cell that we do have is called a pluripotent stem cell, and it will become undifferentiated stem cell, and that's this right here, which is the proerythroblast. This will then develop into your erythroblast, and here we do see that we still have a nucleus and we will still have some organelles present in the cytoplasm. Once it matures into a reticulocyte, the nucleus is expelled and all that's left inside of it is the organelles, and then some hemoglobin starts to form as well. The very mature erythrocyte no longer has a nucleus, it does not have organelles, it does contain hemoglobin. Okay. So once these mature cells are released into the blood, oxygen levels will increase and the kidneys will forego erythropoietin secretion into the blood. In cases where there is extreme blood loss, such as through hemorrhaging, erythropoiesis may increase substantially to make up for the loss. So cells that are close to mature erythrocytes may take days to be released into the bloodstream, but if we have a lot of immature cells, that can take weeks. So the bone marrow may release reticulocytes into circulation to meet the demand of oxygen within our tissues. ABO antigens and antibodies. So antigens initiate immune responses. In the ABO blood group system, these antigens are considered to be sugars. Now, the antibodies are naturally occurring. They are IgM immunoglobulins, and they are made as early as 6 months into life. They are made against A and or B antigens that they do not possess on their own red blood cells. So, for example, if you are blood type A, you do possess the A antigen, but you will possess the opposite antibody, which is anti-B. Their task is to attack the antigen it is made for in the event of an incorrect blood type entering the body. Whenever a unit of blood is to be donated, this unit is called packed red blood cells. It has about 200 milliliters of red blood cells, 100 milliliters of an additive solution, and 30 milliliters of plasma. When given the wrong blood type, 2 reactions will occur. The most dangerous will be the recipient's plasma antibodies attacking the donor's red blood cell antigens. The other will be donor antibodies attacking the recipient red blood cell antigens. Now, this second reaction won't be as severe because the donor's antibodies are reduced by the packed red blood cell process. In the end, we will have one of 2 things. So if the red blood cells do lyse, they will end up releasing their hemoglobin, and that interferes with kidney function and can lead to kidney failure. Another thing that can happen is agglutination can occur, and that can block blood flow to vital areas of the body such as the heart and the brain. Donors and recipients. The universal donor is type O because it doesn't possess antigens that can cause a transfusion reaction in the recipient. The universal receiver is type AB because it doesn't possess antibodies that may react to foreign antigens. Let's take a look at this table right here. If you are blood type A, you can donate to A or AB blood, but you may only receive from A or O. If you are B blood, you can donate to B or AB, but you may receive from B and O only. If you are AB blood, you donate to AB only, but you may receive from any group. If you are O blood, you may donate to all blood groups, but you may only receive from O. RH. In the RH blood group system, the antigens are proteins. If induced, the antibody formed, which is anti-D, will be an IgG immunoglobulin. Now let's take a look at these charts before I continue with this information here. So if you are Rh positive, you do have what's called a D antigen, and you do not have an antibody present in the plasma. If you are Rh negative, then you do not have an antigen present. You may be induced to form an anti-D. Now there are 2 ways that you may be induced. One is if the recipient was exposed to Rh positive blood during a transfusion, and therefore that will facilitate the body to produce anti-D. Another is if an Rh negative pregnant woman is carrying an Rh positive baby. This may also induce her to form an anti-D antibody. So this then could cause a transfusion reaction on the next transfusion given, or could cause erythroblastosis fetalis or hemolytic disease of the newborn with the next pregnancy. And these 2 conditions may be fatal. Now, one other thing to note, not only is ABO important, but RH is also important in matching blood. So if you are Rh positive, you donate to positive but you can receive from both Rh positive and Rh negative. If you are Rh negative, then you can donate to both, but you may only receive from Rh negative blood, and that is extremely important so that you do not induce your body to make anti-D antibodies. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Have a great day.